Test, test, testing microphone.
Grab water.
Go ahead. Good. All right, we're going to call to order the City Council work session for Monday, September 26th, 2022. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By the way, if you know any young people who would like to lead the pledge, I don't know. Lisa, do we have any lined up yet? They will, Friday folders.
Okay.
If any of you,
I asked Travis Stevens if he would send any or all of his kids.
that's right, he's got a crew. He's got a
Yeah.
crew there.
Because I know, like, when we met with Shoreline the first time, they said that that was really cute when they were here, that they had brought that up.
Ah, very good. Good.
Okay, roll call.
Jeff Pelkey,
Here.
Bill Leclerc,
Here.
Darla Leclerc. Here. Tracy Coach. Here. Tim Petrie.
Here.
Jason Raymond.
Here.
Bonnie Shimalunas. Here. Scott Steckmesser.
Here.
Adam Mahalski.
Here.
All in favor.
Okay, we can skip over number 4. We do not have an invited guest tonight. I think there was a mix-up communication-wise where she maybe thought that our meeting was on Tuesday versus a Monday, and she's got a Board of Education meeting tonight.
Yeah,
So I believe.
we were looking to not tie up too much time at a regular meeting because sometimes those agendas get pretty heavy. Of course, school districts, the board's meetings are the 2nd and 4th Mondays. So in light of that, I did ask Lisa to talk to Diane about one of our regular meetings. Which one?
17.
17th, and she indicates her presentation is no more than 15 minutes.
Okay.
I got a question about this. Does she just present and we have an opportunity to ask questions? Or, which I hope is a yes, or is it just a presentation?
That would be up to the council that night. Not an agenda item, so I won't go too deep here. Jack, come on, slide out if he's here. But typically, if it's, it wouldn't be an automatic, the questions from the audience would be allowed. But if it's a presentation discussion, the council would typically be.
I would think if she's presenting to us, we ought to have the chance to ask her questions. If she's not that she's taking her time up, but
Right.
if she's here presenting to us as her will, she ought to be able to answer questions if the council has questions. I would think so.
I hope so, yeah.
I think she just presented to our American Legion Auxiliary last Wednesday, she and a couple of the school board folks. And we did have an opportunity to ask questions, and people did, and folks on matter work. So,
I would think she'd be.
Seems
open
that would
to
just be a
anyone.
natural. Yeah.
She seems to be very good and very open to
Yep.
talking to anyone, so I would think she would. Okay, so no invited guests, 4 is done. Action items under number 5. We'll go right to A. Procurement policy for expenditure of federal funds required by Manitowoc County as a condition of sharing the ARPA funds for lead lateral replacement. Recommended action, motion to adopt the policy. Greg, do you want to lead us there?
This rather complicated looking document with all kinds of references to federal code of regulations is something that Manitowoc County essentially has said to us, city, and likewise City of Manitowoc, if you want to participate in this program where the county will match you dollar for dollar on your outlays of ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act federal funds, we want you to adopt a procurement policy essentially identical to that of the county as it pertains to the expenditure of federal funds only. So that's how it's presented. Elizabeth looked at it and said, this is pretty much consistent with what we see in the boilerplate in any individual grant agreements, like for CDBG. Jack Bruce looked at it. There might be a little, he pointed out, beyond what we typically deal with. Oops, I'm looking at bicycle regulations, excuse me. As it relates to, this is one of the last things about national security things, the stuff about national intelligence and foreign vendors. So he hadn't run into that before, but essentially we're just saying we'll only do this when we are doing federal procurement, And obviously, if there were countervailing or additional requirements in any grant agreement with a federal agency, we'd highlight those and need to comply with those as well. So would recommend adoption by the council.
On page 36, you may want to change that adopted by the Two Rivers City Council.
Uh-oh. Okay. Thank you. Oh, yeah. Sorry, you just substituted, I think, City of Two Rivers for Manitowoc County throughout. That should be adopted by the City of Two Rivers City Council. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to adopt that. Jeff, do I have a second? Bonnie? Sorry, I was looking at Bonnie, I got it, Bonnie. So we got Jeff and Bonnie, any council discussion? See none, let's do a roll call vote. Go ahead, Lisa.
Bill Leclerc.
Aye.
Donald Leclerc.
Aye.
Tracy Coach.
Aye.
Tim Petrie.
Aye.
Jason Ring.
Aye.
Bonnie Shibalunis.
Aye.
Scott Steckmesser.
Aye.
Adam Mahalski.
Aye.
Jeff Dolke.
Aye.
All in favor.
All right, that brings us to B, which is a review of the city ordinances and issues pertaining to bicycles, e-bikes, etc. on city streets, sidewalks, and trails. I'm sure Greg will lead us. It looks like Assistant Chief Minor is here as
We
well.
got some resources both with our Assistant Police Chief and our Parks and Recreation Director as it relates to trails. We've heard concerns from council members and from residents at some meetings over the course of this year about either existing bike regulations and their enforcement, or also questions about applications in specific areas, like along some of the trail segments and in the downtown. I think we've all heard from people that downtown, even though it's already illegal, bicycles on the sidewalks can be a little bit of a menace at times. So I tried to just throw a few slides together very quickly late this afternoon. You know, generally under Wisconsin law, and Ben, correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but generally bikes are considered vehicles under Wisconsin law and are subject to the same rules of operation as other vehicles. You have flow with traffic, you keep to the left on two-way streets, you obey traffic signals, etc. Generally, under the state statutes, bicycles can only be prohibited from operating on streets if there's been a specific prohibition adopted locally. So generally we say we want our bicycles on streets. We don't presently prohibit them on any streets. I did note in looking at Green Bay's ordinance, for example, or 2 or 3, maybe 4 city streets where they do not allow bicycles. And we didn't research this, but I think you'd have an issue restricting them from the roadway, the far right side of the roadway on state highways, because generally the state designs for a so-called complete street design with sufficient width for bicycles plus sidewalks. Bicycles are generally prohibited under the statute from operating on sidewalks unless the local unit has an ordinance allowing such operation. And the word when should be there. When such operation on sidewalks is allowed, the state law specifically states that every person operating a bicycle on a sidewalk shall yield the right of way to any pedestrian and shall exercise due care and give an audible signal when passing a bicycle, electric scooter or electric personal assisted mobility device, or a pedestrian proceeding in the same direction. So, you know, ding, ding, passing on your left, which is supposed to be the protocol out on Mariners Trail and other trails. And I'll quickly say, and is observed maybe 10% of the time. But that is a statutory requirement if you've got a local ordinance that allows bicycles to operate on sidewalks. I thought, at least to start off tonight, we might want to talk about general provisions on operation on sidewalks. Operation on sidewalks by children or people learning to ride, because there is some specific language in the ordinance right now. I know Adam had given me a call and talked to the chief a while ago about a parent that was concerned that their child who wasn't learning to ride but was 12 or under was riding on the sidewalk, and got a verbal warning from an officer. It didn't get written up, but that would be an area to talk about. And then I did include a specific slide to talk about downtown. And I guess I'm thinking primarily the Washington Street corridor and the side streets there. And again, you've got in your packets a copy of our ordinance that's recently amended by the council, which also addresses e-bikes and personal assistive mobility devices, all of which, generally speaking, fall under the same body of law as bicycles. So with that as a jumping off point, as far as operation on sidewalks, this is an excerpt right out of the ordinance we have, which was recently adopted by council. Generally, you can't operate bicycles, e-bikes, scooters, or I'll just say bicycles, make it shorter, on any sidewalk, except the one exception there's a carve out for bikes with wheels 20 inches or less in diameter in residential areas for purposes of learning. And maybe we'll kind of skip over that until a later slide. They can be operated on bridge sidewalks, but shall maintain right-of-way to pedestrians. That is a local Two Rivers thing for years, including in this most recent ordinance. By ordinance, we allow bikes on bridge sidewalks. And when you think about it, if you've ridden Washington Street, or notably Washington or 22nd Street, the hump in the bridge and the heavy traffic and not a lot of lane width, there's something real appealing about headed for that sidewalk. And then the council can, by motion or resolution, permit operation of bicycles, et cetera, on designated sidewalks at its discretion. So this is leaving aside trails, bike ped trails, which we can talk about. The only area I'm aware of where the council by resolution has acted, and maybe it's an ordinance now, think about it, maybe not, is along Riverview Drive. Riverview Drive, after the city resurfaced it and added curb and gutter, probably 20 years ago, with the narrow traffic, just two very narrow traffic lanes, the council did, by resolution, designate the east side, the side away from the river, on Riverview, is usable by bicycles. It's a mighty narrow sidewalk too, if you've ever ridden it. But that's it right now. There are cities that generally allow bicycles to operate on sidewalks. Just throw my opinion in. I don't know that we want to go to that. My experience is little kids or adults, a lot of, when you see them riding illegally on sidewalks, a lot of times they do not yield the right of way to pedestrians. And I guess I will throw in within there about kids or people learning to ride. How about we talk about that in general? Any thoughts about bikes on sidewalks, the way it's regulated now, where you might like to see it go?
I will just bring up the point that I had with a constituent that was frustrated by the whole situation. His kid, I think, was 8 or 9, and is quite a bit taller for his age. So he has a bike that has the, 14-inch wheels, whatever those wheels are, that are not a kid's bike, but he's got a bigger bike because he's taller. And he was the one that was riding on the sidewalk, and and the police, rightfully so, according to the ordinance, should have stopped him and he given him that verbal warning. But the parent is concerned that he doesn't want his kid, his son, to be riding on the street at that age. He can't comprehend probably the rules of the roadway all that well at that age, but yet is too tall probably for one of the more kid bikes. And I guess we just need to try to hopefully find some common ground as to we're protecting the people that walk versus the people that are old enough to be able to drive on the street, who are probably a little bit more reckless, like a teenager or such, that is going to be the one causing the problem. That is what I saw or what I heard of it, and kind of makes sense. How do you enforce that? Darn good question. I mean, I don't know if you have to have those younger kids that have those bikes come in and you get a special permit that they carry with them or that they put on their bike. And it can be free of charge or whatever, that just singles them out to say, hey, yeah, you can. And as long as you're obeying the rules and not running people over, you can do it. But if not, I don't know. I don't have all the answers.
And right now, I mean, again, I don't think we've written a citation for riding a bike on the sidewalk in a long time, probably. How do you prove, as long as the wheels are 20 inches or less, that somebody's, how proficient they are or whether they've learned to ride their bike? That's gotta be a tough
I
jury.
guess what I would add is, and that's my understanding too, Council President, was that, so obviously you guys have heard all the complaining about bicycles on the sidewalks, we had mailers and stuff, there wasn't enough enforcement being done. So rightfully so, I explained that very night, which is the one I think you're talking about. One of our lieutenants was out field training, one of our new officers, and rightfully so, extending that there needs to be more enforcement. We're gonna go out and do some of that enforcement. They had 3 stops that night. Of those 3 stops, one was an adult, one was a teenager, and one was like an 8 or 9-year-old. And all of them were technically in violation. All of them were enforced basically with education, that they should be doing that, explaining the ordinance to them. And this was the same case. In this one though, however, the child explained, that they're 8 years old. I think the parent explained or they told them that their parents didn't want them riding on the sidewalk or in the street, or they should be on the sidewalk. But in this case, again, it was a younger kid who technically was learning age, but was operating an adult bicycle. So yeah, you're right, that's exactly how it happened. So our enforcement has always been, trying to get education out there. As far as enforcement with citations, as we all learned, unfortunately not all that long ago, you can't cite somebody under 12 years old. We had one of those issues where an officer cited somebody under that, and that was a big blowout. But yeah, we don't cite for sure under 12 years old, so it would only be an educational thing. And even above there, there's different levels of enforcement, even if you got to the point of citation. Normally that 12 to 13 years old, it's like an automatic court date, but really nothing more than that. Beyond that, then 14 and 15 would be maybe a small citation, and then really where you actually get a big citation and some sort of court cost type thing would be the 16 and 17-year-old. So that's kind of where enforcement would sit if it rose to the level of citation. But for the most part, that's what we've been actively trying to do, is just educate people with all the complaints that we've had. And honestly, most recently, we focused just our attention on the downtown area, because knowing that there was some discussion on what we wanted to do with this ordinance.
I look at my own neighborhood and there are kids at a house down the street and they ride their bikes and they ride them around the block on their sidewalks. And at a young age, it's generally, although the DOT says the stats are worse on, because somebody might back into you with their car or something coming out of their driveway. But I can also see parents saying, I really feel a lot safer with my little kid, maybe under 12, who's, that's a nice cutoff, at least being able to ride on the sidewalk. And I guess the other thing, if you're older than that and you're just learning, well, get out in the street. It would be a simple way to do it. So, just one.
But it's written in here that it's illegal to go on a road. It says any roadway or highway, and then it says or bicycle path or.
And which section? You're in the ordinance,
Right at the
Tim?
beginning here. No person who resides in Two Rivers shall operate or propel a bike, e-bike, electric scooter, electric personal assist on a public highway. And then further down, it says on city streets.
Which has not been registered. That all ties into the registration requirement, which.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as long as you're registered and.
But if you're not from here, you don't.
Right.
It's-
Right, if you're a visitor, you're okay, and honestly, I don't know how many bike registrations we do these days, but I know there are a lot of non-compliant bikes. We used to charge a fee. That was eliminated quite a few years ago. The intent being, so many bicycles show up unclaimed. They're in somebody's backyard or left in a park, and, well, I don't know how many the police send.
We'll do an auction, and within about 2 months, we'll already be they're falling over. We just have so many of them downstairs, they're overflowing. That's something.
So that language right at the front end is only saying you can't be doing that if you're a resident, your bike isn't registered.
Okay, two separate things. First of all, downtown, let's talk about the 1600 block. You want to ride on the sidewalk because if you're in the road, that's like the tunnel of death. You've got vehicles parked here and moving vehicles here and you're there. So, sidewalk makes absolute sense. The only problem is that people are walking out of these shops and they're gonna look left and right, to make sure you're not gonna bump into somebody. But there's that split second where here comes the bike and here's, whoever came out. I saw someone almost get smacked. It was an elderly lady and she was just scared to death.
Well, couldn't,
So,
yeah, I mean,
I was gonna say, but I saw on here the walk your bike. And if we were to reinstitute fines, then that money could go towards making signs like that. But I think that if money's involved, people are gonna treat it more seriously.
well, again, I wouldn't want to send a little kid down Washington Street on a bicycle on the street. I've ridden up and down the street quite a lot. I don't think you want to prohibit people riding their bike on Washington, but
Well, no,
we're headed in the same place. The sidewalk, yeah, fine, it's unsafe, take your bike on the sidewalk, but walk it, don't ride it.
Right,
And then I was just gonna point out, they're probably they're probably too inconspicuous, but right now, the first tree that you come to in each block, in each direction on the sidewalk, has what was meant as a subtle but visible sign saying bicycle riding prohibited on sidewalks. That, for whatever reason, hasn't done it. There are, stuck, thank you. There are some alternatives, and I know it's on the handout from Mike, and he had shared with the advisory rec board and with Friends of Mariners Trail, the pylons like this, which maybe would be a more visible thing to go out at least in the summertime. Hopefully they wouldn't be like the watch for pedestrians and crosswalk things that get run over and mangled. It's just kind of scary if you're a pedestrian. But yeah.
All the more reason to keep your kid off the street on his bike.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't watch out for a sign.
I guess, is there any, I'm sorry, Jeff.
I'm kind of with you on the age limit, I think 12 and under, this should be okay to be on the sidewalk, because I'll tell you what, I'll pay my grandkids fines for being on the sidewalk because until they're 12. Because I don't want to ride on the streets.
It's a nice clean cutoff too.
Just to be clear, we can't fine up to 12 years old anymore. So under 12 years old, you can't fine, so it would just be educational. So
We're finding anybody, like, how many dollars in bicycle citations do we make every year? Yeah, so it's, if you're not enforcing the law, if it's not, I don't know, this is another one of those, we've got laws, but we're not enforcing laws, so what's the point of the laws?
How many?
As a law itself, it's not a deterrent.
there's very few bikes.
There's gotta be probably at least 100 of them.
Oh, I know.
Easy.
There's very few bikes that are being registered, even with that.
I mean, but there are those nuisance people that it would be nice to stop some of those people,
I'd love to see an adult get nailed downtown for driving, I would anyway, for riding their bike on the sidewalk.
The problem with registration, for instance, though, is you would have to have probable cause to stop them and see. And so you'd have to know whether or not they're a resident or not, because like you said, you can be out of town and operating, and you would be required to have registration. So we would have to have them in violation of something before even stopping.
But I think
riding
generally,
on the sidewalk would be the reason to stop them, right?
if you generally want to educate the community, assuming we keep in place a general prohibition on not riding your bike on the sidewalks, which I'd submit is probably a good thing for adults at least, would it make sense to simply say, no, you can't ride your bikes on the sidewalk, provided if you're under 12, it's permitted. So you don't even get the advice of the officer.
12 and under, you're good to go.
Then you have the parent that's riding on the sidewalk with their kids trailing behind them. Is the parents in violation of the law, but the kids aren't?
I guess my quick answer would be ride your bike on the street. Keep an eye on your kid on the sidewalk.
Oh,
I would also.
I've done that.
Actually, that happens a lot.
Sounds like a terrible.
Is that
The
ticket?
adult is
Yes.
on the street and the kids are on the
Yeah,
sidewalks,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think about all the time, and and some of them are over 12, but,
Yeah.
and some of them are on, what do you call those things?
That's
Not a skateboard.
Scooters.
But I will say, Jason,
Yeah,
going online and doing some quick research this afternoon, there are some cities that say kids under a certain age accompanied by their parent on a bicycle. So what you described,
Yeah. I mean, I think, I would feel bad if I was ticketing somebody, a parent riding with their kids following them on the sidewalk, I don't know. No, and I don't know, maybe their officers out there would do that and be like, it's the law,
yeah. So again, the intent here is to get some clarity. And there's not a lot of, face it, there are other priorities for the PD to enforce, but to the extent someone says there's a problem in our neighborhood or in our downtown, and they do go forth to enforce it, we need clarity.
I would tend to agree with what Jason said. I mean, just from the primary fact that I don't think as an adult following your kid, you're causing a problem or you're gonna run into somebody. You're driving slow because the kid's riding slow. And you may be wanting to keep a close tab on them for whatever reason, maybe running behind them, in front of them, maybe it's mom and dad, one in front, one in back, slamming them in the middle. Either which way, I don't think the parent there is gonna cause a nuisance, obviously, because the kids can't ride fast enough to cause a nuisance to slam into someone. I also I like the 12 and under. I don't know if it's possible or not, but can we give some education when they're in DARE? When we have DARE classes throughout the school, can we have bicycle safety as part of that, or is it strictly gotta be on DARE and you can't take a day?
DARE kind of covers everything, it's
Okay.
making good choices and sound decisions, so it's not like when we were kids where it was just drugs into that, now it's all about making the correct choices in life. So you can cover a wide variety of things.
So that could be something that they could possibly incorporate so that they know 12 and under, and here's what you gotta watch out for. You gotta watch for pedestrians and kind of try to educate them so that they're better, safer, smarter bike riders, even though they're at the age where they can start to become a nuisance with it as well.
Or something that has sort of that age level.
Sure.
I would, the only thing I was going to say is, I know, Councilmember Delkey brought it up, but it would not prevent necessarily a child from being stopped and investigated for that, just in the case that you were talking about, where you have like an adult looking child or somebody that's above 12, physically, it wouldn't stop, an officer from still investigating that.
Then how do you know?
Because you're not
Don't.
being able to tell the difference.
You're 11, you had a mustache and a beard.
And I was one of those kids, so.
Do they,
It's your boy.
That was
do they teach them how to do the hand signals and that when they're in DARE?
Optimists still do the,
At the bike rodeo or wherever they used to have?
Yep.
So where are mobility scooters actually supposed to be?
This isn't.
People complain on the street, in the streets, people complain on the sidewalk, where, yeah, I think
It's
you're right.
actually an assisted device, they can operate anywhere a pedestrian
They can operate either or.
can, anywhere, so you could be walking on the side of the road, you could be on the sidewalk, you can be in the crosswalks. You can't do anything about that, if you remember from a couple of council meetings back, when I brought that up, that all falls in line with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
You can't do anything about those, similar to like service dogs, those can kind of go anywhere.
Maybe we should rewrite that part then.
Well, that covers it right in the beginning, it should. That was in like one of the first sentences, I think, in the ordinances where it described the Americans with Disabilities Act.
So interest in changing that provision about the exception for riding on sidewalks to carve out children 12 and under accompanied by, I don't know if you want to say parent or a responsible adult, because,
Give me grandma and grandpa and yeah, right.
yeah,
they're
the
not
neighbor's
parent.
kid, yeah.
I guess I would just add, just for the council, so they know, I mean, we looked into PD, looked into several different places in the area. Those that allow some sort of sidewalk use, Manitowoc, Keel, Sheboygan, and Brilliant. However, they had a bunch of prohibited areas such as business district, during parades, on residential grass or park grass. So those were 4 of the area ones. Kiwani and Algoma, they strictly stuck with what NEPA was. So basically state statute says you cannot operate on sidewalks, and they didn't add anything or dismiss anything. Those that prohibited were Reedsville and Michigan. They just clearly state no sidewalk riding permitted.
Do they have sidewalks in Michigan?
I just looked at everywhere in the area, just so you guys had a full range to go.
Or unicycles fall. Cause it has in there that you gotta keep your hands on handlebars and
Yeah,
stuff,
they put it also
and what's
described-
safe to one person.
I think it's also
Safe to
described
everybody.
2 wheels or more. Those are the places.
Okay, so the question was, does anyone have heartburn or do they want to carve that out for the, oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, I don't really want bicycles on the street if you can help it. I understand with children, the biggest problem isn't if they are on the street or not. It's the fact that they won't get out of the way for a pedestrian. Where is a pedestrian supposed to go? That's what I don't understand. You know, I had 2 big men on bicycles with the little kid on the sidewalk. This was a few years ago. I didn't say anything to them. I got over to the edge of the lawn so they wouldn't run over my dog. And the adult goes to the kid, go in front of her. I mean, this is, I don't know, I see the kids crossing the street in the middle of the street. Just whip through those pedestrian, by the corners. They're supposed to stop and look if a car is coming. I've seen semi-tractors slam on their brakes because around the corner comes this kid whipping down. This is what the problem I was talking about, not just if they're on the sidewalk or not. And I don't know what to do about it except to approach them and say, you shouldn't do that. I don't know, I got my 2 cents out. I won't vote for it. I don't care about little kids on the sidewalk, I get that. But I just, the problem is that nobody is polite, nobody gets out of the way for pedestrians.
You're right, there are gonna be those bad apples, I'm sure, because, I mean, you're gonna have bad apples, you're gonna have good apples, I mean,
But there's so many. I mean, I saw a young woman, a teenager, she must have been 18, 19, on rollerblades going against the traffic, going on the wrong side of the street while texting. I mean, I'm just saying that everybody thinks they should do whatever they want, and that's what I think is the
If you're
problem.
walking,
My
you're
response to
supposed
that.
to go against traffic,
Um,
so you can see.
Tracy, did you have something?
Well,
Do it in the country.
and to me, that's just a big part of it is just being respectful. So if you have arms where they can ride on the sidewalks, I personally don't have a problem with it or not. And, just so that they always give the pedestrian the right of way, just like you do in a car. If somebody's crossing the street, you're supposed to give them the right of way.
Hopefully we
People
can
like to get
incorporate
ticked.
more of that in that their classes.
Exactly, to
And
teach them.
hopefully get that
Right.
a little bit more addressed in the school system. And I don't wanna say hammer it on them, but make it sound serious to them, because it is serious.
Because just as they could hurt somebody else,
They
their
can-
bike, their bike will go down as well, and so.
Jen, did you have something?
I was agreeing,
Oh.
the more so that if they were just polite.
God, and I wish we could legislate that, just politely.
That'd be great.
A lot. You know, it's interesting because you say you allow the parent, in this case, the parent of the guardian, at least to be accompanying the kid on the sidewalk. There is general language under 833 of our ordinance that no parent or guardian of any child, et cetera, shall authorize or knowingly permit a child to violate any of the provisions. So I'd kind of like it if the little tyke runs me over, that I can at least tell the officer, cite mom or dad who was behind them, that
Yeah.
it's a minor thing. Understanding, unless the council wants to provide money to direct more enforcement resources, we don't do a lot. But we do have an ordinance and we try to communicate. We can't do the public education unless you want us to do it the way it is, without some further direction. So is there generally consensus about exempting children age 12, under age 12 for starters? And any accompanying, we'll have to have Jack or the police wordsmith, a responsible adult, somebody who clearly has a link to the kid.
Do you want a show of hands on that? Why don't we do a show of hands, 'cause we don't have this up for action.
Jack, would you favor that as a change in the existing code?
Is it 12 and under?
Okay, I was suggesting under 12. When you hit 12, that's the magic age where you're in trouble.
To be on the sidewalk, you mean?
That they would be permitted on the sidewalk. In lieu of the language now saying under 20-inch diameter wheels went for purposes of learning, because how do you prove that anyway? And the idea that a lot of parents, when they're young kids, just don't want them on the street.
Personally, I would rather have somebody get an adult that's on the sidewalk, get hurt on the sidewalk, and a kid get killed in the street.
Yeah.
Given those choices,
Right.
So I'm hearing a general consensus
Yeah,
for that.
so
Excellent.
I would say we can bring it back for one of our future council meetings here in October for it to get voted on and drafted up by you guys, or November or December, whenever. it's
Think of,
time.
depending on how this goes tonight, maybe we bring back for council action a summary listing of what we understood to be the consensus on changes here.
Sure.
Just bullet points, and if there's agreement on that, city attorney, write it up. He's on a retainer, by the way, so we don't pay extra.
The walk your bike pylons,
So we're done with that issue then, as far as kids
The
under
kids,
12.
sorry.
Okay, thanks.
but I walking your bike, I think is great.
I like these signs. We did look at this at ARB. I think the signs downtown would be great. I think you could probably find a couple of good responsible business owners downtown that could put them out, or take them back. Possibly, or we could put them on corners of high traffic areas like Brook Tripper probably wouldn't have to come in at all, because I think that's a pretty common intersection. No one's gonna be walking off or walking around with it. It's pretty well lit.
You could probably fabricate some sort of concrete base, like a heavier base with them too, I guess.
We gotta be expanding corners on on most of our corners
Yeah, or
downtown.
if there's a light fixture or something handy, you could just loop a cable around.
Or that.
So take the bicycles prohibited signs down and put up walk your bike signs instead.
Which are bigger, more colorful, describe what you're supposed to
You wanna
do.
leave the other ones?
Or do you leave the others simply because they state a prohibition? Walk your bike, I don't know if you could enforce walk your bike.
Walk your bike on
It's
the
already
sidewalk.
illegal anyway to ride on the sidewalk.
Yeah, you can leave the signs up.
Sounds good.
What if they're under the?
And they-
Bicycle riding, prohibited. So we're telling you to walk your bike, so yeah, I would say they're fine.
Yeah.
They're kind of saying the same thing, we're just telling you what else you can do with it.
Yeah.
If you wanna take it downtown, but obviously you can't ride it, walk it.
friendlier way to say it.
It is.
It is.
And on bases, they make them out of recycled rubbers, probably about 2 inches thick, round, and they're pretty heavy on one way.
As long as nobody walks away with it.
I don't think it's a bad idea either in certain areas. So coming in on Washington, if you come in on Mariners Trail, now you're taking a sidewalk over the bridge and you're not from here. And now you want to go downtown instead of continuing to follow the bike path. Maybe right there's a good spot for one of those, so that somebody from out of the area.
Right.
Mike, do you have any other thoughts?
No, we did discuss, the concrete trail at the beach, that the ARB wasn't particularly supportive of trying to go ordinance on walking the bike there, it is permitted there, but maybe just trying some of these signs there to reduce it during busy hours, just to see if people would just listen to the sign and walk when it's busy. Because we did have an incident out there where a resident, got knocked over by a bike, so, this might be a good try at the beach even, we can try it. If I could chime in on, as a resident, you would make me following my son the sidewalk who's 4 years old and rides on the, I'm not gonna let my 4-year-old go. And my wife will ride with the 2-year-old in the seat behind her, and then the 4-year-old on a bike going to the middle school on the sidewalk. So we do it on a regular basis because it's not a one by himself. So. Resident.
It's a family-friendly thing to do. Yeah.
And I was one of those that spoke up with the one on the beach where I said, maybe during our peak busy times, maybe during 10 and 6, not every day, you could probably put that out on the trail that goes along the beach. I don't want to get away from where a lot of our trails are for biking, walking, blading, just like Mariner's Trail is. And we already prohibit it mainly on the sidewalks unless you're of the age of 11 years old or under now, that I don't want to take the trails away from the bike riders as well. Because at the end of the day, where are they supposed to go then other than the street if they can't use the trails? And I think that gets frustrating because we do get a lot of bike riders that go down to the beach and they want to see the same scenery that everybody else does. I think they got to be respectful. And I think during business hours or busy hours, like Mike said, you get those 90-degree days in the middle of summer. It may not be the greatest idea when you got thousands of people down there either. Maybe it'd be such a pass.
Caution sign or something maybe?
Don't loiter on the sidewalk, down by the beach. I think that's one of the problems. People are just standing there hanging out.
Well, I think the incident came from a bicyclist flying by and hit up a pedestrian. Whether the pedestrian was standing there or not, that's what you're talking
I
about.
think she was walking the dog or something. Waiting for the dog, but.
Some of you may not be able to guess.
Tracy, who was that?
She called me.
I'm sure you all learned about it.
I wound up having to be there for half an hour.
It's not anonymous.
Did she get hurt? Dad, or-
Yeah, well,
Oh.
Here's a hint, the Beach Bash Carnival's not for shit.
Yes.
From that
Same person. Yes.
Oh.
That's her.
I'm sorry.
Yes. That is her. Yeah.
You can sign yourself to death, but I agree.
Yeah.
Early morning or in the evening, I love riding that concrete trail and it doesn't hurt anybody. On the other hand, I've seen it in the middle of the summer, not only people riding their bikes, and I'll see kids mostly throwing their bikes down and leaving them there because, geez, you don't want to get sand in your gear. So instead, you've got bicycles laying on that 10-foot wide concrete trail.
Well, do we have adequate bike racks then adjacent to the trail there at the beach?
there's some right in front of the concession stand and restrooms.
Yep.
I think there's probably a couple others, but they're probably the parking lots too. The other thing you have from me with the photo on the sheet of paper is, I spoke with Friends of Mariners Trail. They were supportive of working with us, maybe even cost sharing and some of it. They have signs at the wayside so that when you come on to Mariners Trail, you see ordinance and etiquettes. Now, I haven't looked up our local ordinance when I wrote this list. And it seems sliding tonight, the state ordinance actually says I should probably slide some of the etiquette stuff into a law. So there's some semantics there, I suppose. Those need to be wordsmithed a little bit more. I caught a typo too as I sat here. So that was just my general idea that we don't have rules posted at the waysides when you come on to Mariners Trail. We literally don't have any rules written for Mariners Trail that I can find. They're not on a website. They're not anywhere. So we need to at least post them on our website.
Yeah, I think the only rule signs out there, the Friends group drew up, and they have no official sanction. Although I think it would be good, that thing about announcing your intent to pass, that could slide up to ordinance / state law.
Because that's state law, so that one actually could be enforced. We want to make sure we categorize like this is ordinance, this is actually law. We literally have to follow this. We try to have people self-regulate first, and then try to reiterate with the etiquette.
I just raised them.
Well, a lot of it regarding streets. So it's your path. It wouldn't be the path, it would be, so when you have a path or something that allows it, it doesn't fall underneath state.
Oh, okay.
State statutes really just regarding streets.
Okay.
Because by state law, you can't operate on paths, sidewalks, any of that stuff, unless local authorities come.
Okay, so that they do say that in those sections. Okay, so that's good. So that was something we were gonna do out of Parks budget and split with Friends of Mariners Trail anyways, to have those on the wayside. to try and improve it, because that's where we're getting a lot of complaints. People don't like the e-bikes, but they're a great way for people with lesser mobility, tourists to go out and have a really nice time and stay active later in life. So, yeah, I wouldn't personally suggest going any farther than that, but I mean, if you really wanted to, I have seen other park districts with a 10-mile-per-hour speed limit. Most of them are 15, like ours.
15 seems to be pretty fair.
It doesn't take much to make you feel like when somebody goes by you, you're gonna think they're going really, really fast, like 15 miles per hour. Honestly, for somebody to get up to 15 miles per hour on Mariners Trail is actually really difficult. Like, you'd have to be a really serious cyclist to hit 15 on Mariners. If you're doing that, you're already on the road. So,
Yeah, but the e-bikes can
The old
easily
e-bikes
go
are another-
15
yeah,
and
they're another
20,
story.
25.
What's the upper limit on a class 1 or 2 e-bike? That's why we kept class 3s out of it.
20.
The differentiation that I've understood about the e-bikes is the level of pedaling. So a class 3 e-bike does not require any pedaling whatsoever. That's why it's not allowed.
Okay.
Class 1 and 2 just kind of, yeah, there's certain levels of the amount of pedaling you have to do.
And the class 3 can fly.
Well, it kind of-
Although,
it
I know
startles you when somebody comes passing you on, you're doing 25, 30, and somebody comes by you on a bike, they kind of, I mean, it's just, they're just taking their lives in their own hands. Hopefully that kind of just takes care of itself, you know?
Well, at the end of the day, yeah.
I'm 12.
Take care of it.
And there was no liability alleged to the city, but there was an accident in 2021 out near the Woodland Wayside on the trail that resulted in very serious injury. I mean, the woman sustained a severe head injury. I don't know what her status is now, but it was colliding with another person in her party that she was behind on the trail.
And that was just a regular bicycle.
What's that? Yeah.
She's doing good.
Regular bicycle.
She's up, but I know she had rehab after her hospitalization. Yeah, it was a serious accident. Yeah, so it can happen. And I'm not very fit, but I know I can go a lot more than 15 on Mariners Trail. Not that I have.
I don't know why she crashed. She crashed and then her boyfriend ran into her.
Maybe it was vice versa. Yeah, it was a new bicycle, as I recall. Yeah, it was just a tough situation. So we kind of went from ordinance over to enforcement issues, but I'm hearing support downtown for something like the pylon signs that are seen here, in addition to. And are we talking just Washington, or are we talking, not to get too broad, but Washington and 22nd Streets? You ever step out of, it ain't Phil Royce anymore, I'm sorry.
Connie's.
Yeah, ever step out of Connie's, because you can get going at a good clip down the sidewalk there illegally.
Could you say, if you see a pedestrian get off your bike, for example, 22nd Street, I know that it's not high traffic with walkers necessarily, not high, you know what I mean, not like a lot.
Or maybe we just leave it to Washington, I don't know.
I think that's there, if we get complaints or things that we need to adjust, we can always tinker with it.
Yep.
Because on 22nd Street, yeah, we got Connie's.
Other than that,
Right now, we don't really have much else other than that one.
it's not like Washington with any number of
Right, where you
businesses
got
that just step out the
many
door.
of them up and down.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ben had a good idea about putting it down down by McDonald's. So could it be Washington Street and then that corner, that could be part of it?
Were you talking after the bridge or before the bridge? Because the bridge, you can ride on the sidewalk anyway, and
Right, no,
I
I was
think that's
talking-
part of
I was
Mariners
starting
Trail.
after, because I
Yeah.
said, like, if you're.
I think it's right after.
Because if you're from out of the area and you've already ridden on the trail and now you're allowed to ride on the sidewalk, I think if I'm from outside the area, I just assume I can keep on going downtown on the sidewalk. Where maybe, I'm not looking and paying attention to the smaller signs, maybe something like that would stick out.
And just
Yeah, I
before
think you'd have to
Sobeys.
put it after where the route
Yeah, right on
branches
the
off,
corner.
this Lamb Drive.
Yeah,
and
right
then-
across the street there for that, the Kozlowski's there for that brown houses.
Yep.
They do it right there.
Good. Gosh, is there anything else in the ordinance? Okay, so we've got the in-training thing, we've got downtown, I guess, maybe that was all.
I would like to just come back to the beach really quick. I would like to try those signs on the beach, even though it's not ordinance. So if you see them, I'd like to try them out there during busy times. Just to make sure people know we're listening to them.
I didn't hear any objections to that.
Were there any objections to that, trying it during, on the beach, on the path? This is only the path, though, that we're talking about, that's adjacent to the
Yeah,
beach,
the
not the wandering across, right?
That concrete path that's right there with the beach.
During high busy traffic times, probably weekends where it's really hot, from a time period too, I think what we discussed was 10 to 6. So you can still use it in the morning, you can still use it at night, it's just during that high peak.
Any other issues related to bicycles? Ben, or does PB have any
I think
issues?
those
with them
signs
too?
there would be fine, because again, like you had mentioned, city manager it's not enforceable to make somebody want to bike, but, it definitely in the areas where it's not allowed, we can enforce. In that area, it's just more a suggestion than anything, I think. I don't see a problem with it.
Again, it's only a matter of enforcement, but I'd observe where we have Zlatnik one way through the beach, and we've got a concrete beach walk, we've got a two-way off-street meandering bike trail is on the beach side, then crosses over by the concessions to the inland side. We also have a bike lane on Zlatnik, which is marked just perfectly. It's one way like the street. You can't ride on the street against traffic. People almost routinely go the wrong way down that on-street lane. But that's something that could be ticketed right now if an officer happened to observe it. That's my only other bicycle beef. There are communities that mandate helmets. I don't sense that Two Rivers wants to get into that even for kids. It's a parental choice.
My opinion, yes. We can, I don't have a problem suggesting it, but I don't think that we get in the business of trying to mandate it. Unless anyone has objections, feel free to speak up. It's all our city.
I think the worst that comes from Mike's suggestion down at the beach is that we get inundated with phone calls about why people aren't walking their bikes, but we just explain it,
It's a suggestion.
that's what we're trying to do to mitigate people riding in busy times.
I think at this point, I wouldn't even try it until next year, until May or June next year, too, so.
Odds are, unless I would go out there and hit Dorothy, I'm not gonna encounter too many pedestrians on the bridge unless they're out walking their dog. Well, I don't know that we need to bring a list back per se. The only thing I'm hearing right now that would be an ordinance amendment then would be the thing about when it's okay to ride your bicycle on the sidewalk. And again, under 12, and that exemption also applies to an accompanying responsible adult, whatever that is, parent, guardian. However, would there be an exclusion to that on Washington Street? I don't think you need to be taking your kid down Washington Street in the business district.
We don't allow it, so you can't ride on it.
Well, but
That's
that,
prohibited, I thought.
it is, but it's the general prohibition to riding bicycles on the sidewalk that
Yes.
prohibits them on Washington, so.
So the fact you can drive them in the street, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying is, if right now, this thing, I don't think there's a carve out right now. This business about when, 20 inches or in diameter or less, that says in residential areas. Maybe that's adequate. I'm not sure what the residential area.
Because I don't think we still want the youngins driving even downtown.
No,
I think
and maybe,
they ought to walk or just avoid Washington Street.
yeah,
I think you gotta carve out that exception for 11 under regardless.
right.
Under 12 or 12 and under?
I had said under 12,
I
Your
would
call.
say 12 and under.
12 and under.
That way when you hit 13,
13. Unlucky, get them right
Well,
now.
teenagers, you're a teenager.
Okay, everybody okay with that, I assume? I mean, right now it says in residential areas. You want to leave that? That's only where the exemption is. I mean, you don't want to be training little Johnny to ride his bike on Washington. hopefully residential areas is sufficient. Yeah. If you go down Mishcot Road on the sidewalk and you happen to go past the one business zone property that is Dollar General, probably okay.
And the gas station,
And yeah,
they get a lot of traffic through there.
Yeah.
Yep, with everything,
Yeah.
and a lot of people ride their bikes, up and down Parkway Boulevard because. There's no
I'm probably
traffic,
being
it's
too
very
picky, I'm
wide.
just saying, in residential areas, what's that? You know, not on Washington is pretty clear.
I like that.
In residential areas,
Even though Family Dollar, it's not really it's not really a business district, it's just zone business.
that's what yeah.
But, I mean, still, you could just say Washington Street.
Mhm.
I think that would give everyone a clear idea. But then, when do you stop it? Do you stop it all where the old high school is?
That's what I was gonna say, what?
Or do you stop it at 22nd Street?
22nd.
22nd, so it's at-
I would assume
And it ends
bridge
with
to
business.
22nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we don't get too broad with Washington and
Right.
extend the big long area that we don't need.
Suggestion for the park to only have bicycle racks on the road that's on the far side. So that way it doesn't give them a reason to be going on that side.
Encourage them to be
Yeah.
using them on that side of the road. Yeah. Parks guys take a note of that, so. Okay.
You mean Central Park? What do
Yeah.
you do?
It'd be kind of silly to have bicycle racks on the Washington side of the park and then say it should be riding a bicycle there. And
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah. That's what's kind of tough about our Main Street, because really a lot of people use Mariners Trail, a lot of people follow the on-street signage to connect you to Raleigh Point Trail, and that takes you around Washington Street. Keeps you alive, but it takes you around Washington. But, you know, just not to get too deep on this, we're already deep enough. We did have dialogue with DOT a few years ago about possibly going back to something that was discussed when Washington was rebuilt or before it was rebuilt, which was to restripe it for one northbound traffic lane, one southbound traffic lane, a center left turn lane, and marked bicycle lanes. Scott helped me out, but we fall a little short of the required width, because you can't count as available space for the bike lane anything between the seam that lies between the the gutter and the roadway. DOT's suggestion was if you do an asphalt overlay, then you could do it. It was like, no, we're not.
How short are we? How much more space?
It's
do we have?
mighty close.
a couple inches of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Come
Am I recalling that though correctly? The seam,
Honestly, we needed 13, 15 feet from the parking lane to the edge of travel lane. Even what we have on Lincoln Avenue is on the verge of. That's 13.
yeah, and you couldn't count anything between the seam and the gutter face. Unless there was no seam. And we're not anywhere near needing to do an asphalt overlay of Washington.
Right, if they would afford integral curb rather than
Yeah.
putting their curb on later, that would be fine.
You're right, and that, that wasn't a consideration at the time, but I honestly think that street, well, it's kind of like, man, if we had people double parking to make deliveries, it'd be nice. We don't really need 4 traffic lanes on Washington Street, given the traffic counts. Madison and Monroe carry more, but just something for future reference. Okay. Well, I think this was good, and really, there's only one ordinance change coming out of it, and then we'll have to address in our signage budget, because those pylons and things like that aren't cheap. I'm sure Main Street, which is not represented here, but would love to help make downtown safer. Maybe there's some grant opportunities the city and Main Street could cooperate on. So, anything else about bicycles?
Oh, have we been involved in a bicycle or there are groups that do bike studies or petition to become a bike-friendly city or any of that? Have we had any groups take on anything like that?
I've looked into it a little bit lately, but not really serious.
We have a bike ped plan that is about, over 10 years old and probably should be updated. It does talk about anytime we're looking at street reconstruction, evaluating whether you can add dedicated facilities. I don't think we're currently, and we should be, we're not currently a member of the Wisconsin Bike Federation, which includes a lot of communities that are promoting bicycling. That wouldn't be a hard thing to do.
Because, yeah, I mean, we have an opportunity to be a more bike-friendly community with our access to the trails, Rally Point and, Mariners Trail. And that's something we talked about with the ATV, UTV thing, not to bring that back up again, but we don't have connecting trails. Here we do have bicycle connecting trails. So if there's an opportunity to do something that makes the trails connect more to the community, that's something that should be, I think, evaluated. And I don't know if there's a volunteer group that, spearheads the recreation or biking in our community, but, it'd be great if there was a group out there that was passionate about that and wanted to do some of the legwork or push us to get more involved in that. It's something to ask the city on our ideas and, hey, we want, but when you have a community group that's spearheading that change, it makes it a lot easier to put resources behind it when there's a group willing to work with you on that.
Talk to Mike Cleveland. I'll bet you he could come up with
I think Friends of the Mariners Trail is a good group to look to for some guidance. And
Yeah, some, I mean, their focus is primarily that stretch of asphalt, but I hear you.
But there are people on that board that have businesses in the community that certainly do like to see the community tied to the trail.
John Brunner notably represents the business there.
I was thinking Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa Chair's friends.
Would like to see people coming off the trail and stopping for coffee.
I'm really interested in this, Jason, so this is kind of a big deal for me too, being a cyclist and a instructor, so someday all my free time.
I think at UNH, just have an opportunity to talk about, how we tie in parks to our downtowns.
I'd love to do a city employee bike to work day where all city employees, we can do it on city council day and we all get in the downtown together, do something like that. It'd be super cool.
When you think about it, when we had major employers downtown, a lot of people bicycled to work at Hamilton and Eggers. I mean, probably not 5% of the workforce, but there were people that bicycled and could, because of proximity, bicycle to work every day. So, any thoughts? This hasn't come up recently, but it will after the first snowfall. We have not historically plowed Mariners Trail.
I've gotten several complaints about this as well. Since we talked about it last spring.
Yeah, and I've been part of the guilty coalition saying, let's not. We have for the last 2 winters at least plowed from the Spirit of the Rivers Wayside to Taylor Street, because you got kind of a destination point with the hospital, you got parking at each end. If there would be a cost factor, it does raise a question of whether there's any expectation about sanding or salting when the trail gets icy.
That's where the problem would come into.
Yeah, as a trail gardener, because my wife and I tend one of the 50-some gardens, and it's where the trail is right up next to it. I'd sure want to see something like in the winter bypassing through the parking lot. So if we are plowing, because sometimes you ease off asphalt a little bit, or worse yet, salting. Just speaking truly as a gardener, and I wouldn't want to see that. The city does plow the waysides along Memorial Drive because the state stopped paying for that several years ago. We do plow that Spirit of the Rivers parking lot, which gives you a point where you can get out of your car and either go up to Taylor or south to Manna to walk. But we do every year get some complaints. Why doesn't Two Rivers plow its entire 4.5 mile or so?
The trail's asphalt.
Section of the trail is asphalt.
Then you should just use sand, because with the heat from the sun and
It ought
to
to
get a
be
little bit of
sufficient.
grip and.
Yep. On the other hand, I see people with fat tire bikes riding it a lot when we have these fairly open winters. And
Are we obligated to sand and salt the trail? Because it's a trail, not a sidewalk, correct? Is there a difference?
that's a good question.
You can.
And generally, there's recreational liability exemptions in Wisconsin that protect cities. I don't know that, it'd be a good question. I don't know that Manitowoc does any sanding or salting their segment.
They definitely plow.
They plow, I think they may salt.
It makes sense.
But, let's see what kind of costs this is attributed to.
We can,
I'm not opposed to doing it, I do get complaints, but I
Yeah,
wanna
we
make sure.
And I do think if if you hold off on at least the salting and even the sanding maybe is, you can look at it as a pollution issue being so close to the lake.
Yep.
And then same thing with the gardens along the trail,
Yep.
but to at least clear the trail is sort of that compromise.
The better you plow it, the more you're gonna tear the trail.
Well, would you plow or can you get one of them little brushy things that spins and brushes the snow off? Is that as I don't know, sidewalk friendly as plowing, or is that?
It's like you got light fluffy snow and not freezing
I
rain.
don't know, what's the,
We currently have that,
yeah, and I mean, what's the depth of snow that you can clear with that,
and I'm one of the.
4 inches or less.
Depth isn't even an issue, it's weight of the snow.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
all
okay.
it is.
Well, yeah, and especially what do you do with the snow? In those sections where here's the guardrail and here's the split rail fence, there's the embankment down to the lake, there's.
You maintain the Raider Trail for snow?
We have to.
Well, I guess that might be the example of what they're doing.
What's that, Scott?
I don't know how much salt or sand we put on.
And I don't know that we.
The difference would be with Mariners Trail is the proximity to North Drive, county road maintenance.
And the lake. Well, yeah, that's the other thing is, especially where you're right tight behind the guardrail, you get a really big snowstorm and you can be fighting a whole lot of heavy, nasty crap there.
Nice and heavy snows, it's, every time you introduce snow.
Yeah.
It can be very expensive.
Yeah, so.
We do maintain the Raider Trail, we do, even though it's a small trail inside the library. I mean, it doesn't hurt to trickle. It doesn't hurt to take a look at it, but I know last time it was a pretty astronomical number.
Yeah, we can look at it again. And we do maintain the little segment of Raleigh Point Trail from Walsh Field out to the Sandy Bay subdivision. But again, in each of those cases, there's connectivity to something. I get it. In Mariners Trail, the value would essentially be recreational, unless you want to, I'm being facetious, so don't criticize, I didn't criticize you. Unless you want to go like from the hospital to the Lighthouse Inn or something. It's not an integral connection where that little section of Raleigh Point, to get from that subdivision into town, it's effectively the sidewalk, it's the only means. Us with the school, that's what the trail was built for, was connectivity, and it was a requirement grant. So, think about it, we won't be going into this year looking at expanding on it, we can look at it at budget time. See what the expectations are. The other thing is, I don't think the community would expect it to be plowed within 24 hours after the end of the snowfall, like we require with sidewalks. But
A little busy at that time with the windrows.
Yep, but be sure that if we start plowing it and don't do that, you'll be hearing about it from people that get notices about not clearing their sidewalks. So, okay, I have to bring that up.
What is the trail like if you haven't been plowing it this whole time? You know what I mean? Does it really need to be plowed?
Oh.
I mean, what's happening to it?
A lot of winters lately, maybe a week or so after a snowstorm, it all depends. You can see the sun has melted it and it's fairly open. You get a good 2 feet of snow backing in off the lake, it's gonna be covered and pretty much unusable for a lot of time.
Can't you consider having it be used for like skiers? Not skiers.
Cross-country
downhill,
skiing.
but-
Yeah, I don't know that it's ideal in those sections where the county snow plows are dumping everything over, but I've seen people cross-country skiing in sections.
Oh, that's what it's called, cross.
Yeah. There, okay, just wanted to throw that out for fun.
Okay, that is all on the agenda for tonight, there's no
It is.
session. So
No,
I will
there is
look
not.
for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jeff, second by Jason, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you.
But